On March 4, 1994, John Candy finished shooting what he believed was one of the best scenes of his career. He cooked dinner for his crew, said goodnight, went to his room in Durango, Mexico, and sometime before morning, his heart stopped. His bodyguard knocked for 2 minutes before opening the door. John Candy was found half out of bed, as if he'd tried to get up and fallen back. He was 43 years old, the same age his father had died, and his grandfather before that. The world had lost the most lovable man in Hollywood. Before most of us had come close to finishing saying thank you, Uncle Buck came out in 1989. John Hughes wrote it specifically for John Candy. A film about a man who nobody believed in, who showed up anyway, and who turned out to be exactly what a broken family needed. Critics called it one of the warmest comedies Hollywood had ever made. They weren't wrong. The kid sitting across from him on screen, 8 years old, completely unknown, about to become the most famous child actor on the planet, 37 years later. Here's where the cast of Uncle Buck ended up. And the story behind the man who made the whole thing possible will stay with you long after the credits roll. 1. John Candy, Uncle Buck Russell. He was 38 years old when Uncle Buck filmed. Already a beloved figure from SCTV and planes, trains, and automobiles. But Uncle Buck was different. It was written for him, built around his specific kind of warmth. The big man with the battered car and the giant pancakes, and the heart that was bigger than everything else about him. What audiences didn't see was the weight he carried off screen. His father had died of a heart attack at 35, just before John's 5th birthday. His grandfather had died the same way. John Candy grew up knowing what might be coming, trying to outrun it with exercise, with diets, with trainers. His son Chris said later, he grew up with heart disease, he just didn't fully know it. He kept working at a pace that scared people who loved him. Cool Runnings, Canadian Bacon, and then Wagons East in Mexico, 1994. The last scene he filmed, he told the crew it was some of his best work. He cooked them dinner. He said goodnight. He never woke up. March 4th, 1994. 43 years old, exactly the age he'd always feared. In 2025, Amazon Prime released John Candy, I Like Me, a documentary featuring Bill Murray, Tom Hanks, and Steve Martin on what they lost. Tom Hanks said the world still hasn't fully processed the absence. Steve Martin briefly moved in with Candy's widow Rosemary and their 2 children after the death, just to make sure they weren't alone. That single detail tells you everything about the kind of man John Candy was, and the kind of hole he left. The man who played Buck Russell left us at 43. The boy sitting across from him at the breakfast table? He was about to have the most turbulent childhood in Hollywood history. 2. Macaulay Culkin, Miles Russell. He was 8 years old in Uncle Buck, completely natural. Not performing, just existing in front of the camera with the ease that John Hughes immediately recognized as something rare. The following year, Home Alone made him the most famous child on earth. He was 9. The film grossed $476 million worldwide on an $18 million budget. His face was everywhere. His childhood was gone. What came next is one of the most documented cautionary tales in Hollywood history. The legal battle with his parents over his earnings, the pressure, the retreat. He walked away from acting at 14 after Richie Rich and didn't come back for nearly a decade. During those years, tabloids built narratives about him that he spent years quietly dismantling. In December 2025, he appeared on the Smartless podcast and said something that cuts right to the heart of it. Technically, I'm retired right now. I retire and then, if I find something I like, I unretire, do that, and immediately retire afterwards. Every gig is my last. He voiced a character in Zootopia 2. He appeared in Fallout Season 2 on Amazon Prime. He presented at the 2026 Golden Globes in January. He lives in Toluca Lake, Los Angeles, in an $8 million home, with his partner Brenda Song and their 2 sons, Dakota and Carson. The boy who was never allowed to just be a kid is now, at 45, finally just being a dad. From the boy who grew up too fast to the teenage girl who stole the whole movie and then quietly built one of the most interesting careers in independent film. 3. Jean Louisa Kelly, Tia Russell. She was 17 years old. Tia Russell, the angry, closed-off, deeply hurt teenager who wanted nothing to do with Buck and ended up needing him more than anyone. Jean Louisa Kelly played her with a raw emotional honesty that completely grounded a film that could have been pure comedy. After Uncle Buck, her career moved steadily into film and television. Mr. Holland's opus, The Fantastics, Yes Dear on CBS, for 6 seasons. She has been almost entirely absent from the tabloids and social media throughout, building a private life with her family that she has kept carefully away from public view. Jean Louisa Kelly is 54 years old in 2026. She represents something rare in a cast full of complicated stories. Someone who took a significant role in a beloved film, carried it beautifully, and then simply got on with living. No scandals, no dramatic exits, just a career, a family, and a life built entirely on her own terms. From the teenager who held the emotional center, to the 6-year-old who walked into the film and immediately ran away with every scene she was in. 4. Gaby Hoffmann, Maisie Russell. She was 6 years old, and somehow the funniest person in a film starring John Candy. Maisie Russell, the tiny, relentlessly direct youngest sibling who asked questions nobody else would and said things nobody else dared. Gaby Hoffmann delivered every line with the kind of perfect deadpan that most adult comedians spend careers trying to develop. She had already appeared in Field of Dreams the same year. After Uncle Buck came Sleepless in Seattle, Everyone Says I Love You. And then something unexpected, a deliberate pivot away from the mainstream and into independent film that defined the second half of her career. She appeared in Transparent, for which she received Emmy and Golden Globe nominations. Crystal Fairy, Enough Said. Girls, she is 44 years old in 2026, still working, still choosing roles with the same fierce independence she showed at 6 years old, when she looked directly at John Candy and said exactly what she thought. The industry grew up around her. She stayed ahead of it. From the girl who said exactly what she thought, to the woman who was already an Academy Award nominee before she ever set foot in Cafe Rene. 5. Amy Madigan, Shanice Kobolowski. Buck's long-suffering, tire shop-owning girlfriend, the woman who loved a man she couldn't quite get to commit, played with a warmth and exasperation that felt completely real. Amy Madigan was 38 years old and already an Academy Award nominee for twice in a lifetime. She has been married to Ed Harris since 1983, over 40 years. One of Hollywood's genuinely quiet success stories. She has continued working steadily in film and television throughout, never chasing the spotlight, always delivering when called upon. In 2026, she is 75 years old, still working, still married to the same man. Shanice finally got her answer from Buck at the end of the film. Amy Madigan got her answer from Ed Harris in 1983 and has never had to ask again. From the woman who got the happy ending to the villain, the man with the mole, and the most memorable way anyone has ever been asked to leave a front porch. 6. The rest of the family. Garrett M. Brown, Bob Russell. The harried father who hands his kids to Buck and prays. Garrett Brown has worked steadily in film and television for over 4 decades. Character actor royalty. He is also the inventor of the Steadicam, the revolutionary camera stabilization system he developed in the early 1970s that has been used in virtually every major film since. The Shining, Rocky, every tracking shot you've ever loved. That's Garrett Brown's invention. Uncle Buck's dad invented the Steadicam. There is no trivia more satisfying than that. Elaine Bromka, Cindy Russell, the mother who leaves her children with Buck and spends the film hoping that was the right call. Elaine Bromka has built a rich career in theater and television across 4 decades. The kind of working actor who shows up in everything and elevates every scene. Still active in 2026, still one of the most respected performers in New York theater. Bug Hall, the villain neighbor. The teenager with the mole, the one Buck drills with questions through the door. The one who gets his tie caught in the electric drill. Bug Hall is 44 years old in 2026. He has worked steadily in film and television throughout. Most notably, in The Little Rascals. He remains the definitive answer to any trivia question about who got the most memorable exit from a front porch in 1989 comedy history. 3 supporting players. Between them, the inventor of the Steadicam, a Tony-nominated theater career, and the most iconic drill scene in John Hughes history. This cast was stacked from top to bottom. 7. The Last Pancake. 37 years since Buck Russell's battered car pulled up to that house in Chicago. The man who owned that car died at 43 in a hotel room in Mexico, having just delivered what he thought was the best work of his life. The boy at the breakfast table grew up to describe himself as technically retired, a man who takes a job when it moves him and immediately walks away on his own terms, for the first time in a life that was never really his own until now. The angry teenager built a career and a life without a single tabloid headline. The 6-year-old became an Emmy-nominated actress in independent film. The girlfriend married Ed Harris in 1983 and never looked back, and the dad invented the Steadicam. Uncle Buck is a film about a man who didn't seem like the right person for the job, who showed up in a car that didn't work properly, with no clear plan, and made pancakes the size of hubcaps, who turned out to be exactly what was needed. John Candy was exactly that person, on screen and off, and the fact that we only got him for 43 years is the one thing about this story that still doesn't sit right.